So today we're going to look at factoring trinomials, which means we're going to look at polynomials that have 3 terms, and we're going to use this method called brute force. So we have 7 different steps, and you need to fill in the blanks on the 7 steps on your note sheet. So the first step is to find the greatest common factor, or your GCF. That's what we've been doing for several weeks now, with greatest common factor and with grouping. Step 2 is to multiply the coefficients of the squared term. Remember, that's going to be like the x to the second term by the constant, which is going to be the last term. List all the factor pairs of the product. And then step 4, find factor pairs that add up to the coefficient of the middle term. So you're going to fill in middle. Step 5, make 2 fractions using the pair. The numerator, which remember is the top of the fraction, will be the x squared term's coefficient, and the denominator, which is the bottom of a fraction, will be the numbers from the pair. Step 6, we're going to simplify or reduce the fractions. And then step 7 says the numerator of each fraction will be the x coefficient in each binomial, and the denominator will be the constant. So when we finish, our answers are going to look something similar to this. So you're going to have 2 binomials that you're multiplying together, just like when we did grouping. Okay, so let's look at the first example. So we have 12x squared plus 7x plus 1. So the first thing I want you to notice is that they're in descending order by the x's. So we have 2x, 1x, and then no x. And that should usually be the case, but you just should always double check just to make sure. So our first step is that we're going to find the greatest common factor. So our greatest common factor for 12, 7, and 1 would just be 1. And we don't have any variables in common to all 3. So we can move to step 2, which is to multiply the x squared term, which is this 12, by the constant, which is 1. So that's going to give us 12, so we're going to come over here to the side and write 12. Now we want all the factor pairs that we can multiply together to give us 12. So that could be 1 and 12, 2 and 6, or 3 and 4. And what we're looking for is the pair that will multiply together to give us this positive 12, but also add together to give us the middle term, which is 7. So that's going to be 3 and 4, so we'll mark these others out. 3 times 4 is 12, and 3 plus 4 is also 7. So we're going to take this shortcut, and we're going to draw these 2 fraction bars. And on the top of the fraction, we're going to put the x squared term, which is the 12, on the top of each one, which is the numerator. And in the denominator, the bottom, we're going to put these numbers from our factor pair. So one of them will be 3, and one of them will be 4. And then we're going to reduce or simplify if we can. So 12 over 3 will reduce to 4 over 1. And 12 over 4 is going to reduce to 3 over 1. Then our answers are going to look like binomials that we're multiplying together, just like when we did grouping. So in the first parenthesis, we're going to start with the numerator of the first fraction, which is 4. And then we're going to put our variable, which is x. And then the bottom, the denominator, is going to be the constant that we add, so plus 1. Same thing on the second one. We're going to have the numerator, which is 3, as our first number, put an x with it. The bottom is the constant you're adding, which is plus 1. This will be our answer. Okay, so let's look at the second example. So the second example, we have 2x squared plus 5x minus 12. So once again, notice it's in descending order by the x's. So that means we're going to first we're going to check for greatest common factor. So greatest common factor for 2, 5, and negative 12. So that would just be a 1, and there's no variables in common. So then we can multiply the x squared term, which is the 2, by the constant, which notice this time we have a negative 12. So 2 times negative 12 is negative 24. So just thinking about the 24, what all can we multiply together to give us 24? So we'd have a 1 and 24, a 2 and 12, a 3 and 8, or 4 and 6. So So now this time we need something that will multiply together to give us negative 24 and add together to give us positive 5. So if you look at your chart at the bottom of your note sheet, notice it says multiplied number is positive or multiplied number is negative. So this time our multiplied number over here is a negative 24. And it says that our middle number is a positive 5. So that means that we want our bigger factor to be positive, because we're going to have different signs here to get this negative 24. So we really want what can we subtract to give us 5, which would be 3 and 8. So on our chart it says the bigger number is positive, so that means our 8 is positive, the 3 would be negative. So negative 3 times 8 is negative 24. Negative 3 times 8 is also positive 5. So we'll make our two fraction bars. The top of the fraction will be the x squared coefficient, which is 2. And the bottom, the denominators, will be the numbers from the factor term. So a negative 3 and a positive 8. Now see if you can reduce or simplify. So the first one, 2 over negative 3, we can't reduce that. That one's good. But 2 over 8, we can reduce to 1 over 4. So we'll make our binomials. The first binomial, you take the numerator of the first fraction, which is 2, with our variable x. The bottom is your constant, so minus 3 since we have a negative. The second one, take the numerator of the second fraction, so 1x. And the bottom, the denominator is your constant, so plus 4. And this would be your answer. Okay, example 3. So we have 4x squared minus 12x plus 9. So once again, it's in descending order by our x's. Check for greatest common factor. So 4, 12, and 9. That would just be a 1. And no variables in common. So that means we can go ahead and we can multiply our x squared term, which is 4, by our constant, which is 9. So 4 times 9 is 36. So what all can we multiply together to give us 36? So 1 and 36, 2 and 18, 3 and 12, 4 and 9, and 6 and 6. So this time we need to multiply together to give us positive 36 and add together to give us negative 12. So if you look at your note sheet at the bottom, we have our multiplied number is positive, but our middle term is negative. So that means both of our factors need to be negative. So what can we add together to give us 12? Which would be 6 and 6. But since this is a negative 12, that means both of these will be negatives. You can mark the others out. So we'll go to our fractions. So the numerator will be the x squared term, which is 4. Our denominators will be from our factor pair, so negative 6 on both of them. Reduce or simplify your fractions. So 4 over negative 6 will reduce to 2 over negative 3. And notice they're both the same thing, so the second one will also reduce to 2 over negative 3. So then our parentheses for our binomial. So the first would be 2 with our variable x. The constant would be minus 3. Same thing on the second fraction. So 2 again, x. Our constant would be minus 3. And then notice, since these are both the same in the set of parentheses, we could write this as the quantity of 2x minus 3 to the second power. And this would be our answer. Okay, so example 4, why don't you pause the video, try this one on your own. Then you can come back and watch and make sure that you have solved it correctly. So we have x squared plus 10x minus 200. So if it were me, I would put a 1 right in front of that x squared. So check for greatest common factor. So 1, 10, and 200. So that would just be 1, no variables in common. So we'll multiply the x squared coefficient, which is 1, by our constant, which is negative 200. So that will give us negative 200. So we'll ignore the negative for a second. What all can we multiply together to give us 200? So So 1 and 200, 2 and 100, 4 and 50, 5 and 40, 10 and 20. And actually, I'm going to stop there because I believe the 10 and the 20 is what we need. Because we're trying to multiply together to give us negative 200, add together to give us positive 10. So go back to your chart. You have a multiplied numbers negative because we have negative 200. The middle term's positive because we have a positive 10. So our bigger factor is positive. So that means we're going to have a positive 20 and a negative 10. So let's make our fractions. So the numerator is the coefficient of the x squared, which is 1. The denominators are our factor pairs. So negative 10, positive 20. Reduce or simplify, which neither one of those reduce. So that means we can go straight to our binomials. So the numerator is 1. So 1x minus 10. And the second one would be 1x plus 20. And there's our final answer. Okay, so final example here, we have 6x squared plus 9x minus 27. So we'll start with greatest common factor. So 6, 9, and 27, which this one actually has a greatest common factor, which would be 3. So we'll take out a 3. They don't have any variables in common. So we have 3 terms, so 3 blanks. So 6 divided by 3 will give us a 2x squared. 9 divided by 3 will give us a positive 3x. And a negative 27 divided by 3 will give us a negative 9. So we're going to ignore that 3 for a second. And we're just going to look at this part inside the parentheses. And we're going to see if we can do brute force to this part. Okay, so we're going to multiply our x squared term, which is 2, by our constant, which is negative 9. So that will give us negative 18. Ignore the negative for a second. What can we multiply together to give us 18? So 1 and 18, 2 and 9, 3 and 6. So if you look at your chart, we need to multiply together to give us a negative 18 and add together to give us a positive 3. So multiplied number is negative and our middle number is positive. So that means our biggest factor is going to be positive. So we can use 6 and 3. Looks like we're going to have a negative 3 and a positive 6. So negative 3 times 6, that gives us this negative 18. Negative 3 plus 6 will still give us the positive 3. So we'll make our two fractions, two fraction bars. The numerator is going to be the x squared term, which is the 2. The denominator is going to be the factor pair. So one of them is negative 3, the other is positive 6. Reduce if you can. The first one doesn't, but 2 over 6 does. That will reduce to 1 over 3. So we'll make our binomials. First binomial coefficient would be 2x minus 3. The second binomial would have a positive 1x, and our constant would be plus 3. Now remember, we took out this greatest common factor in the beginning, so we're also going to carry down this 3 in front. This would be our final answer.